Oh, hi, Lauris. How are
Hi.
you? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are live on Facebook. This is our first Facebook Live for Wise Wellness Guild, and I could not be more honored to welcome you, Lauris Woolford. How are you doing?
Thanks, Stevie.
Good, good. I know that we are, as we're testing out these new platforms, one thing that we've been really interested in doing is leaning into providing access for everyone to join into the magic that we're creating over here at Wise Wellness Guild. And having Lauris Woolford as our executive coach in residence, 33 years plus of leadership and development experience, executive vice president at a Fortune 500 company, all of this life experience that you bring to us, and really looking to advance women through wellness. And so this evening, I know we've been having a lot of conversations in our community about burnout and what it's going to take to be able to help women, not only, during this pandemic, but this has been going on for forever, right? We're just like running on the hamster wheel. It's the never-ending, consumption of data and information. And I think that you and I have had multiple discussions about what is it going to take to help women be able to invest in themselves so they can continue to invest in others. And the conversation resilience came up. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight is all about being resilient and how you can build resiliency in order to avoid burnout. And so thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear more just about, how have things been going with the women you're coaching and what have you learned about resilience through this time?
Yeah. Stevie, it's first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I mean, this is like living my best self when I get to work with you and work with all the tremendous women that are members of WISE or watching for the first time. Um, it's really hectic right now. I mean, there's so many toxicities that are out in the environment and so many things going on in people's lives. And some people seem to be more resilient than others. And so people have asked me, how do I develop more resilience? But first, I think we ought to really define, even like you said, there's so many misconceptions about what it is. And, when I was looking at resilience, it really is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It's that ability to spring back. It's like that rubber band, the elasticity that's in it that you can recover. And it's how we continue to move forward. Life gives us a lot of curveballs and a lot of hard balls thrown at us. And it's how we adapt to change and how we keep going in spite of adversity, and I don't think resilience is like introversion or extroversion, or it's a personal attribute that you're born with it or you aren't born with it. From what I've read from all the psychology papers is that everyone has resilience. It's how they use it and how they, muscle memory with it and how they remember how they have it and how they develop it. Because I think you can really develop resiliency.
We used to, when I first started getting into Wise Wellness Guild and started building this with women, I used to liken the analogy of a palm tree. So palm trees in the normal beach setting, you have the cool breeze, and the conditions are just right, and it's beautiful, right? They remind you of summer and excitement, and it's just like such a symbol, right, of happiness. But when a hurricane comes, they're able to be resilient, right? It takes a lot to knock down a palm tree, and they're able to bend and stretch. And it's because of the way that they've used that time to grow and to strengthen and to be tall and to soak up so much of that sunshine when we're in good conditions, that when things are tough, they're able to withstand it. And I always thought about that analogy because I think that just really speaks to the ability of, kind of coming up for air sometimes and understanding really what you're all about.
When I was preparing for this and thinking about this today, I pulled some of my girlfriends. I looked at all the people that I've been coaching. And I really came up with, in my life, what I thought about it, two things that really struck me about resiliency. And the first one is mindset. The second one is muscle memory. But I'd like to, talk a little bit about mindset, Stevie, and, jump in here because I think, first of all, you have to be aware of your feelings, how you're feeling, and recognizing them and not denying them or suppressing them because it can come out in forms that you really don't want it to be. But if you think about what your mindset is and discover what your sense of control is, because so many times when things happen to us, we feel like we're sort of victimized or we feel like we really don't have control. But when you're going through something, as they say, keep on going. But when you're going through something, discover what are the things that you can control. And the thing that always came to my mind that I can control right away was my own attitude, thinking about what my attitude was on whatever it was that I was, going through. When you think about, I mean, Stevie, you've gone through a lot of things in your life. What do you think about?
I always think about what is this feeling in service of? And I think that I've been given the feedback that I can circle back around on negative feelings and kind of bring it back around. I can bounce back quickly. And I think that for me, I think about what is going down this spiral going to do to help me advance forward and to move forward. And I think that it is, though, a skill that has to be learned because a lot of times, through this pandemic and just life in general, I think that a lot of times there's sometimes a pebble can feel like a boulder to some people, right? And you never know what's going to hit you. But if you suppress that, then it just really turns into something that can be very much a distraction when it didn't need to be. It really wasn't as catastrophic as you thought it was going to be. So.
Sorry, Stevie, I was running out of juice since we switched to my phone.
That's all right. We can be agile. We can be resilient. We can work with this. So
Well, as you were talking about that, I was also thinking about mindset, about reaching inside yourself and remembering where you find your grit, where you find your perseverance. I think it's also an awful lot about your self-talk that you do. I mean, you've heard me say a lot of these sayings. And, when we read that Glennon Doyle book about Untamed, we talked about we can do hard things. Women, we can do hard things. That's something I think about all the time. Another saying that always comes to mind is this too shall pass.
I have it right here, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's backwards or not, but yeah, I actually keep it right here.
I know.
Yeah.
I love that. But also know this too shall pass. And, I'll tell my friends, various times we've all had, issues with our children. Everyone does. And you say to yourself, just because it's the way it is now doesn't mean it's always going to be this way, But when you're in the midst of it, sometimes you kind of lose that perspective. And it's all encompassing and it feels like it's always going to go on from here. And when you really think about it, many times it isn't, it isn't going to go on.
Well, and you said something earlier that I want to make sure that we capture and that people really hear this is that I think instead of pushing the feelings aside and discounting them that's not resilience. Okay. Resilience isn't pretending that it isn't there because that as it manifests itself and it comes back up, that doesn't go away. But if you accept it and you allow for it to stay there and you determine what to do with it, you give it a name, you put a place and you put it in your life, you understand that it's going to exist. I think managing that allows for you to really understand how you're going to move forward and manage it, right? And address it when
I agree. Stevie, it's like what you said made me really think it's like almost hitting the pause button a minute and getting centered, you know, because you can say to yourself, I'm really off kilter right now. And I know why I'm off kilter. Got to be able to, you know, get centered again, you know, to be at my best. And I think another thing is, you know, picture a positive future image. I was talking to one of my girlfriends that went, all cancer is scary, and she went through some scary cancer, and she said she identified as a survivor, and she always thought about a positive future image, that she was going to go through this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I think that if you really can understand, and you've helped me a lot with this, is understanding, you know, it's like this now, and understanding and pausing and saying, instead of just pushing through it, let's take a step back and understand, how do we want to step forward into this and not pushing through it. And I know somebody, I mean, you know me, I zip around like I'm on fire sometimes, you know, and it's never positive when I'm like, you know, if I can slow down and have a clear sense of focus and center myself into what is it that I need to do with this information? And do I need to address it, or can I just let it go? Can it just be? We used to talk about leafing things all the time. I don't have to react to every piece of negative feedback.
Right.
I don't have to even address it, actually, because that's somebody else's feedback for me, and that's kind of their thing. But if you value that relationship, then you might step into it. But if you don't, then that's also okay, because, you know, there's different ways that we kind of manage things. So I think it's just so crucial. Like, it's like this now, but it's not always going to be this way. I find myself saying that all the time.
Well, and you and I've talked, we've done programs on emotional intelligence. You know, we've talked a lot about self-awareness, you know, being aware of your feelings so that then you can manage your feelings, and you're not just letting, you know, that amygdala hijacking get the best of you, and that you're actually thinking, how do I feel about this? Because I think when you do that and you stop and that you pause and you think, how do I really feel about this? It gives your mind a chance to catch up, and so that you can be more objective, you can be more thoughtful, you know, you can think ahead and you can plan ahead then.
Well, and as we step into the best version of ourselves, and I think that I can speak for a lot of people when I say, I mean, if you are feeling like the best version of yourself, then I am so happy for you. I mean, it's incredible, right? I think that for the vast majority of us, though, we generally recognize that the conditions aren't ideal, and we are doing the best that we can.
Yes.
And I think that thriving means something very different right now. The expectations that we put on ourselves to achieve what we did when we weren't in these conditions is so unrealistic, because you were living in a world where the conditions were ideal. And I think that all of the subconscious things that kind of come into that, a lot of times when we try to control things that might be outside of our control, and we burn energy doing that, right? Burn energy and strength, and we get frustrated and mad about things that are outside of our control, instead of using that energy and harnessing it and saying, this is what I can control. This is where I am right now today. And how can I channel that energy, some of that negative energy, and turn it into positive, and say, what is like one small thing that I could do to just invest in myself today? And
baby steps.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we always have, you know, we're so used to at work of having these unbelievable goals and action steps and milestones and project plans and stuff. And we think that has to go over our personal life sometimes. And we also, I don't think, honestly, sometimes, Stevie, this environment in my life, I don't remember an environment quite like this. And I'm not that old, but where you have so much unrest and so much discourse and so much going on at the same time, and really life threatening, and people losing their lives or their livelihoods at this time. And then we wonder why we're feeling a little off kilter. You know, if you have any empathy and any compassion and stuff for other people. But I do think then you do have to bring it down, like you said, that locus of control. What can you do for yourself and for your children or your siblings or your partner or spouse? What can you do for you right now?
Yeah.
What baby steps can you take for yourself right now?
Yeah. And I don't know if you feel this way, but I know I feel this way, trying to mother in a pandemic and trying to,
Mhm.
start a business, not just start a business, but like really grow a business, in such an exponential way and be all of these different roles is I just put really unrealistic expectations on myself. And I know that that's shocking to you.
You, Stevie?
No way. Right? Because how I've always I find validation, right, in that.
Yeah.
But I think that what I've started to recognize is I'm at my healthiest when I let go of the expectations of what things are supposed to be in the future. Because the future is such a like morphing thing, right? I mean,
Mhm.
a year ago, I left my full-time corporate job to open a physical location for this business, right?
Mhm.
I planned out, I had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And in none of those plans did a global
Yeah.
pandemic make it into this, right? And so we don't
Right.
know what things are going to look like. And so if I try to control what the future looks like and I plan so far ahead, there's just, I'm setting myself up for failure. I
Yeah.
get more in the loss of it, something that's already not happened. And so I love that, as we think about being in the moment and being present, what's like one small tangible thing that you can do for yourself in this moment that can make you feel, if accomplishment is something that drives you, it's something that you value, right?
Yeah.
And like, then how do you channel it back into that and like make sure that we feel like we're making progress in
Mhm.
small ways instead of maybe not large sweeping ways. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One other thing I found in talking to everybody that I talked to about this was one of the things that everybody said when they're going through challenging times to remember is to find a sense of purpose. Like I can remember when I was getting divorced, I remember thinking, okay, failure is not an option here as far as moving forward. I had a daughter, a baby to take care of, and finding that purpose. And I had another friend who, when she lost her husband, she was like, okay, she had a mother to take care of, and she had two boys to take care of. And finding whatever that purpose is that you have. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had a good friend who's lost her mother recently. And when she has her family there, she has her business there, but finding something bigger than yourself
Yeah.
to really put some of your care and to give you that sense of, finding meaning. David Kessler wrote this book on like the sixth stage of grief. And the whole thing is about finding meaning in the person's life and finding meaning in your life going forward.
I had an incredible conversation this morning with a woman. She's actually in Spain right now. She joined us last week, actually. And she lives in her van, okay?
Mhm.
And she travels the world and in this van, and it's absolutely incredible. She's very accomplished, but has made this life choice that is very unconventional.
Mhm.
I think that she is seeking her purpose to live, in a very simple way and
Mhm.
living fully into unleashing the potential for people, but also allowing for people to be curious about things that might be unconventional from societal norms. And this
Yeah.
is her first step into this, right? And I think
Mhm.
that conversation for me just it it is so relevant right now because your purpose doesn't have to be something that is so grandiose, right?
Yeah.
You have to feel like for me, my purpose started with I love being able to be a platform and a connector,
Mhm.
help women thrive and grow in like so many different capacities. I love
Mhm.
that, right? People in general, but specifically my purpose is I think really to help advance women. But your purpose can be, like being able to make people feel seen walking down the street and smiling, right? And like
It could be feeding your family,
feeding your family.
getting the laundry done.
It can be so
Mhm.
so regular and
Yeah.
normal, right? And
Yeah.
I do feel like purpose tends to carry this really big weight. I guess it feels like daunting in a way. And when people
Mhm.
talk about purpose, and then it's got to be this big manifesto, and I think that your purpose can just be um, exactly who you are, and it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be anything more than that. And it's just like, and I think that that's for me, as people are trying to figure it out during this pandemic, and we have so many people that are, you know, navigating their work and life and all of the, and they're getting burnt out. They're trying to find meaning in this pandemic. And I
Mhm.
found that some people have actually like really worked themselves up over not making the most time out of this, not starting. I
Yeah.
heard 2 days ago somebody say, I like cannot believe I wanted to start a side hustle in a pandemic and this pandemic, and I just haven't gotten to it. And I'm like, shocking. You're surviving. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but for me, it's just I think that sometimes high achieving, high performing women just put so much pressure to like be better, like
Yeah.
for themselves, when really maybe you're just enough now. Like maybe this.
Well, and Stevie, you and I've talked about, I think the thing about resilience is like not being stuck where
Yeah.
you are. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think that's where I wanted to talk about the second part, where I think about one of it is definitely your mindset, but I
Yes.
think some of it is muscle memory. And you've heard me say this like 1,000 times, like remember the challenges and the obstacles that you've already overcome. You know, when you're a child, your obstacles are, falling off your bike and maybe not getting picked to go to a party, and they're much lower risk. And you know but as you grow up, think of all the things, the first person in your family to go to college, your first job, think of all the challenges. And I love Oprah because I think she's so positive for women.
Yeah.
And on the back of her magazine, she has that article about things I know for sure.
Mhm.
And when I'm coaching women, a lot of times I'll ask them to take a legal piece of paper out and write at the top things I know for sure. And they have to fill it. And I mean things like I'm smart, I'm curious, I'm a learner, I'm a problem solver, I'm resilient, I have friends I can count on and stuff. Because most times, even though it might be a new thing you're going through, it's not your first rodeo as far as overcoming challenges and obstacles.
But I think the brain, getting into the neuroscience of that, I think that the brain, much like you talk about childbirth, I've never gone through that, but your brain blocks out trauma, and your brain
Mhm.
blocks out things that are hard because it wants that positivity. It keeps it in the back of your mind because of survival tactics.
Mhm.
Really, most of the time, it's wanting to shift towards like optimism and really propelling you forward. And I think that that's part of it, is we sometimes do forget. We move through things so quickly that we
Yes.
forget that we've done them before. We've done the things that are hard already. We're already
Yes.
set up. We're built for this. I mean,
Right.
so these unforeseen times and uncertain conditions of a pandemic, like we've got this. Like, it might not feel that way now, but looking back on this, I think that we're gonna really understand, like, we had our lives upheaved, right?
Mhm.
Overturned, and we dismantled everything that we knew. And we came back together stronger. And we came
Mhm.
back together looking a little different, but maybe there was a lot of really hard in that, right? We've done the hard, but I read something the other day about choosing your hard. Like, which hard
Yeah.
are you going to choose? Because it's all hard. It's more about
Mhm.
the mindset about how you go about it.
But that's where I do think, that terminology like after action review, I think sometimes to hit my favorite pause button to be able to think and say, okay, how am I doing through this? And
Yeah,
what's helping me get through this?
yeah,
Like, is it self-care?
yeah.
You and I talk about mind, body, heart, and spirit a lot.
Mhm.
And so, do we take a look at how we're doing in each one of those, that holistic balance exercise, to be
Mhm.
able to say, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How's my family doing? You know, I remember when I was divorced and raising two girls, I just decided no one ever died of dust bunnies or dust tumbleweeds. And they're just some things you have to give up in order to keep going forward.
Well, we in this week's newsletter, I talk about the glass balls and plastic balls.
Yes.
Right. So you're juggling the balls in the air, and there are some things that can fall on the ground, and you can pick them right back up later if you need to. Maybe not at all. Dust bunnies being one, right? But there are things that are glass, right? Your self-care, your mental health, your physical health, right?
Yes.
Like really keeping yourself in check of, am I hydrating? Am I just getting back to the basics, right? Like, am I eating healthy? Am I getting out and moving, getting some sunshine on my face? When you don't meet those basic needs, I think a lot of times we don't really recognize how much that permeates so many other parts of our lives, and how that doesn't set us up for success to be able to withstand it when things don't go our way or things are really hard.
Well, I think, Stevie, that's like the whole purpose behind WISE, for women who give so much of themselves. And in this time now with homeschooling children and maybe taking steps back in their careers and worried about parents that they can't see or they can't help out. And all those things that, that putting on your oxygen mask, we say that, but there isn't probably a coaching conversation that I don't have where I ask the client, the person, what are you doing for your self-care? And like you talked about, whether it's sleep, whether it's quiet time, for me, it has been nature this summer, has meant so much to me, nutrition, exercise, or a lot of women, I've been talking to women in some big metropolitan cities that are they're lonely. They really have, everybody is so isolated and they're not getting together. Almost they've stopped the virtual happy hours. And I'm very concerned because we're going into fall and winter. It was one thing in summer times. That's why, to have this resilient conversation now, to think, how do you add to your resilient bank account? How do you make a lot more deposits to get ready for this crazy winter?
I love that so much. I love that, putting deposits in, and understanding how you're going to fortify for, I don't want to sound scary or anything, but I'm already somebody who, I loathe winter. I despise it. I am not built for the cold. Okay. And it was so funny. I remember moving to Chicago. I moved there when I moved there, it was in October. And I was like, oh, Chicago is lovely. It's great. And then I, went through the worst winter that they had seen in years. And I was like, this is not, you recognize, I think I, gained weight, a lot of weight. And I was in a job I was unhappy with, right? And I didn't really have a lot of friends when I was there. Thank God I finally made, a few new ones. But I think that you just don't really, there's a lot working, we already know. There's a lot working against us, okay, with women, I'll say that. And then compounded with the circumstances that we're in, I think that having a plan and understanding that this is going to be a challenge, but understanding also what we're going to do about it now. How are we going to start to make those deposits? And I just think that that's so crucial about how are we going to project manage our lives the same way that we project manage work, and how
and that's why I like the muscle memory, remembering what you've gone through in the past, but also what's meaningful to you right now. And if instead of seeing 10 friends, you see 3 friends or 2 friends, and if everybody's Zoom weary, maybe you just talk or you stand in people's driveways or sidewalks or take a walk in the park, but I think to have a plan to take action, the mind, body, heart, and spirit. When I think about the body, the self-care, knowing what you need, the sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, and then just to make your plan, to be out there. Because I think that resilience, in order to stay elastic, you have to use that muscle to stay elastic. It's movement right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wish that I could work individually with every person
Yeah.
I would know. I don't wish I wish you could. But because you're the expert and I merely am just, I really do think that we are at such a pivotal time in history with women. What is it? 865,000 women left the force last month alone.
Yes.
And again, there are some people who voluntarily left the workforce because they were already planning on doing that. There are women who are planning to take a pause, which is completely fine. But there's a lot of women who get a lot of joy and they value contributing, but they're leaving because they feel like they don't have another option. The piece that concerns me with that is making that choice when it is not it's when it's not, it doesn't feel like a choice.
Yeah.
The choice when it doesn't feel like it's a choice is not healthy and is not in service of your purpose. And that is the piece I just want to empower people. When you think about your resilience, if you feel burnt out, if you feel like you're not in the right position, I would just encourage you to push pause versus completely stepping out right now and really considering what would need to be true for this to be possible. And for me to still be able to fulfill this part of my purpose and my values. And as we think about then what needs to go away, because I think that a part of resilience that I did want to bring up, a lot of it is actually saying no thank you to some things that look like obstacles. Like sometimes we allow obstacles to come into our way that feel like obligation or things that other people tell us we have to do. You're a grown ass woman, okay? We can make decisions that impact our lives, and they do come with consequences, but sometimes those consequences aren't completely necessary, and maybe they're not as scary once we make them. So I don't know. I just think that if we sometimes act like we don't have a choice, and we really no choice sometimes is a choice too.
Yeah. Well, as you and I've said, no is a complete sentence.
It is. Yeah.
But, Stevie, on the other side of that, I know that some women also don't have the choices. Yeah. They literally have had to step out for their children, for their spouse, for their parents. And the thing is, I would say on that is still to be hopeful, to figure out possibility thinking, to know that what you're going through now doesn't mean it's always going to be this way, and to figure out how can you be the best, in the situation that you're given right now. I can remember being divorced and thinking, okay, I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't have the car to get the job. I needed the job to get the car for daycare. And I was overwhelmed, but you just think, okay, look, I can figure this out, but it brings me to something that we really haven't talked about that everyone talked to me about when they talked about resilience is asking for help.
Yes.
When they say it takes a village, I think it takes a village, whether it's raising your children or having a career. Yes. I had I've got these girlfriends, I call them the Weezers, and they're just a teeny bit older than I am, but they were always a rung or two above me in my career. And I looked up to them and they taught me so many things. And finally, I remember when I was divorced, I was thinking, okay, I got to get there, and they kept saying all along, Lauris, you can get there. But I didn't believe it myself. And then when I needed to, and then, open arms and help me as much as they possibly could. But I think it's a strength to be able to say, I need help. I need you to help me. I need you, the importance of your social connections,
yes. And I think that so many women feel there's a lot of things that I think women feel, right? Sometimes it's they perceive that it's not strength. It's not for them to ask for help. I think sometimes it's also maybe a distrust. I heard so many members talk about well, my husband or my spouse or my significant other doesn't do it that way, and so I'll do it, and they take it on. Well, guess what? Your partner can order the toilet paper as good as you can, right? Your spouse can probably go and, pick up one more day or something. And I think that what I end up hearing is that you expect for other people to be mind readers, and there's so much resentment that comes from that. And that can eat away and deteriorate resiliency so quickly. And even if you are single or you don't have a partner, I do want to, kind of cover that with, I think that sometimes the help is, I just need to talk. And sometimes understanding, you and I do talk about a little bit with emotional vampires and like understanding, like beware, right? So understanding if you are asking somebody for help, understanding where they are, but not being afraid that like sometimes people being able to help fills them up too. Recognize they're not in this alone. I know I get to a place where sometimes I try to help too much, and then I have to go in internal for a minute to kind of rebuild my energy. But I do think that there's something really powerful in just reaching out and saying, hey, like, can you help me with this? And people are usually generally pretty willing to.
Oh, Stevie, I have found out that people are very willing to help you out. And whether it's at work, like whether you need to build more advocacy for whatever you're trying to get accomplished, to work with your peers, to figure out how to influence and negotiate, or it's in your personal life. The other thing I want to tell you, you and I've talked about this, and you have some wonderful therapists, and Maggie and Dr. Ashley Solomon, people that are involved with WISE, but I don't think I've met a person in my life that one time or another couldn't have used a coach or a therapist to have talked to. All the great players, all the great sports people have coaches, and they have coaches not because they're bad and they want to get better, but it's they want to keep it. If they're good and they just want to continue to be good. And there are times when you really need someone objective outside your best friends, outside your family, your partner, to talk to. And I just want to urge people, when they're trying to build their resilience, to think about coaching, to think about therapy or marriage counseling, or talking to a minister, whoever that you see spiritually, and things like that.
I think that you have really shown me the value of what a coach looks like. If you, like I said, if you during this time feel like you are firing on all cylinders and you don't need a coach, then like I really would love to meet you. But for me and my personal growth, I think that where we started, we were talking about kind of being stuck. That where I push on this is, I think that sometimes when we feel stuck, we feel like we panic and we don't feel like we have options, right? We don't feel like we have choices. What I would say is, before you give up and throw in the towel or feel like, oh, I can't do this, or you stop trying to push forward, I just think that that's where coaching and really being able to reach out to someone, like whether it is a therapist or a coach, or starting with somebody in your religious community, is just imperative to talk it out loud. And I think that making sure that whoever you're having the conversation with has the skill set to help you go.
Yes.
Because I do think I love like Girl Talk and the community that we have created, and I think it's fantastic. But this is a part art, part science. And there are some real tactics in all of those three avenues that can really help to jostle you a little bit and understand and provide more clarity than just allowing the feedback loop of like the complaining and the negative self spiral that I think a lot of people go down.
Yeah. I just think, life is complicated, and the other thing, Stevie, everybody has a story. Everybody. So I think sometimes people feel like they're the only ones that are going through this, or they're the only ones that feel this way, or the only ones that had this happen to them. And it's so not true. And the one thing in, teaching empathy and learning a lot about empathy is that, you look at anybody today, and this pandemic and this unrest time, political, social, climate, all of the above, impacts everyone so differently. So how it impacts you is not the same way it impacts someone else. You know, there's never been a greater time for more compassion or more empathy than there is right now.
Yes.
And really looking at someone, and like, if someone's rude to you at the grocery line, or someone cuts you off driving and stuff, instead of that reaction because you're already on edge because of everything you're dealing with, thinking to yourself, pausing a minute and thinking, I wonder what their story is.
Yeah.
I don't know what their story is.
Yeah.
I
I just wonder if, as a part of resilience, to what you're speaking to is really very human connection too, of resilience doesn't mean, and I said this before and I'll say it again because this is what it used to mean to me when my experience with burnout. Resilience used to mean, Stevie, you've got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, roll up your sleeves, and get to work and just barrel through, right? Well, as barreling through, I mowed over a lot of people, which is very out of character for me.
Mm-hmm.
I have major regrets of that because that is so not what I value.
Yeah.
That's so out of character for me.
Intention versus impact,
Oh
Stevie.
my gosh, I feel like that you always talk about with Maya Angelou. I know it's your favorite quote, right?
It
People
is.
people might forget what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel.
Right.
And that, for me, when you talk about empathy and what you bring to the table in those moments, like, there's so much about resilience that I think as a collective community that we collectively, I've noticed, have started to waver a little bit, right? Because we're focused on, again, like our own bubble, when I think we aren't realizing that when things feel out of control and we're just so focused on, getting back to what we can control, I think that we also forget the power of our environment and the power of putting positivity into others' lives. And that quite possibly the more that you project and the more that you manifest and create positivity and optimism, how that breathes, and that can create a really amazing experience in trying to find the positivity coming out of this entire situation.
Well, and science, researchers will tell you that study, neuroscience, the toxicity of emotions.
Yes.
If you have a bad day at work and you go home, or in this case, you turn in the living room from the kitchen, and those negative emotions literally stay in your body for like 36 hours. I mean, the toxicity and stuff. But on the other side, positive emotions. The positive emotions can have such an impact on you and in the entire environment. And when I was part of a human resource team one time, and one of our behavioral norms for the team was assume innocence. And that's like, I just love that. Like, and that's, sometimes people will say to me, gosh, Lauris, this was my intention, but this was my impact. And it's aligning. When you have self-awareness and self-control, you align your intentions and your impact so that there isn't that conflict. But I think the emotions, I've really cut down on my news. I've cut down on some of my reading right now, because I think until the election is over, until we get a little bit further ahead on some of this stuff, I'm very aware of what's going on. But for my own resilience, and so that my emotions don't get all stirred up inside all the time, that's my self-care. That's one of the things I decided to do.
I think that's fantastic. And we will actually be having a conversation on Instagram Live about the media and journalism, and how this has really impacted women in journalism. And I think that will be a really eye-opening discussion because, their whole life. Kyla Woods once said, if it bleeds, it leads. And we know that a lot of times that people are kind of, when you search for the good, you'll find the good. When you search for the bad, that's what you're going to find. And I think that, as we look to breed positivity and optimism, I think that being really choiceful just about the nutrition that you take in your body isn't just food, right? It's
Yeah.
all the things that you're consuming. It's about the people that are around you, and
Yes.
being choiceful and unapologetic about the decisions that you make in those areas, and being able to allow for yourself the space to fortify yourself and making those hard choices. I think, I'll go back to at the worst point in my life of burnout was just like the smallest little something can feel like a boulder, right? It's a little comment. And that's when you start to recognize those things. I think it's really about creating that force field around yourself and saying, now's the time for me to really focus on me, and and how do I actually make sure that I show up as the best version of myself? So
yeah. Well, we talk, in leadership, we talk a lot about the chronic stress and renewal. And they have shown that hope, compassion, playfulness,
yeah,
laughter, these are all stress busters, and to whether you're watching a YouTube video or America's Funniest Home Videos, or, I've some of the women that I've coached in our Wise Coaching Circle turned me on to a couple of these very upbeat women podcasts.
oh, great.
Brene Brown, for
Oh my
example, Michelle Obama and stuff.
God.
And I've been listening to those, driving to and from Michigan for 8 hours. And gosh, to listen to upbeat, positive, affirmation. It's like that's one thing I think that we have to be mindful of. What I was talking to someone today, coaching one of your friends today, and we were talking about, she said, I used to read the New York Times at bedtime. I said, I did too. I had to stop because it got me so worked up. And it's like, now I'm reading our book club books, or I'm reading beach reads, because from watching Netflix or whatever I'm watching on TV to then bedtime, I need that calming period of time,
Absolutely. I think how you start your day and how you end your day are two of the most important choices that you can make.
I think that's a good point.
I've actually, and what's so interesting, I've really gotten away from my routine as of late, just with like shifts and schedules, and I could put together, I don't know, a myriad of excuses, right? I'm just like, I'm in one of like my off seasons, okay? Getting back to it, we're like recommitting again, we're going to get back to it. But I do think that, that those moments of intention that you really kind of say, I'm going to create space. And so when I was at my absolute best when I was waking up early, I was going for a run, or I really created space for mindfulness and meditation. I was journaling in the morning, and then at night I would watch The Office or something mindless and silly, right? Or I would read my book, read something that was easy, and then put on the white noise machine and head to bed. And I think that now the scroll of Instagram's gotten to me. I'm like reading all the things, trying, because I think that while we're high achieving, high performing women, we want to be in the know, right? We want to be able to educate others on what's going on in this political environment. We want to have perspective if people ask us. We want to grow, right? It's part of our responsibility, but that doesn't mean that it has to be in you have to trade off your mental health for it. Right. And I think that that's just your point is so valid. Is I'm really feeling inspired to get back to my routine. I really needed this today, Lauris. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I always find out about when I'm coaching someone is that, tell me where you are right now. First of all, but then, so let's say you start a conversation like that. And sometimes during this period of time, it can be a little negative. Okay. Then you'll ask, tell me a silver lining moment. Tell me something positive that came out of this. Like sometimes I almost feel guilty, Stevie, because I have been able to spend time with my younger daughter. I haven't spent this much time with her since she was 18, and the ability as an adult to spend this much time with her has just been a gift. And then my other daughter to come up here with my grandsons up to Michigan this summer. And, you're almost like thinking, gosh, I shouldn't smile, or I should feel bad about this because there's so many people struggling with so many issues. But I think you really have to know yourself. You know, it
Yeah.
starts with that self-awareness again. And just like you said, you know when you're at your best. So I would say to you, okay, if you know that you're at your best, what's your first one thing you can do? Just one baby step that you can do. And maybe it's setting your alarm early one morning this week and getting your run in,
Yeah.
you know, and just doing it one time,
Yeah.
or instead giving yourself that bubble bath, that bath bomb, and that
Oh,
facial
yeah.
and going to bed early.
I mean, I do it for my 4-year-old all the time. This kid
Yeah.
has it made. He gets a bubble bath all the time. And I, think, okay, well, my like very quick, if I'm lucky if I get a shower and I mean, forget it, washing my hair. Like this takes way too long, right? And
Yeah.
you can create all the excuses in the world. But I think that for me, the getting up and running and knowing that that's the thing that I need to do to put it all into, I need to ask for that space for myself
Yeah.
of myself, and then what needs to happen in order to create that. I think that
Yeah.
the piece I wanted to make sure that we don't lose sight of though is that we can be grateful for things during this time. Like
Oh, yes.
feel, and I love that you use that example because like the silver lining in all of this, just because it's hard for other people doesn't mean that you have to feel bad. And because
Yeah.
there are things, WISE has grown exponentially, right? 5 countries, we're in 12 states, things are going great.
Hmm.
That also doesn't mean though that like this hasn't been really hard for small business owners or for women who have stepped out of the
Yes.
workforce, right? As an empath, I feel that every day, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that understanding that it's okay to be grateful for things that you have, but it's also okay to want more. And I think that understanding that both of those things can be true, Maggie always tells us that, right? That like,
Hmm.
two things can be true at the same time, that we can feel what we feel, but we can also want to know that like it's okay to be excited about something. It's okay
Yeah.
to not, there's going to be some people that are so relieved that they don't have to go to the obligatory Thanksgiving this year,
Yeah.
right? Like, is that a silver lining? I think so for some people because
Uh-huh.
we did a Hope for the Holidays last year, where between Christmas and New Year's, we talked a lot about grief and resentment and anxiety with like all the things, all the expectations that the holidays bring. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's go to Florida or somewhere. Or let's go to like somewhere, probably not
Hmm.
Florida. It's probably a terrible example. But like let's just hunker down and like enjoy each other's company and
Yeah.
bring something a totally new experience. So
But I mean, Stevie, that kind of gets back to that definition of resilience to begin with. When we talk about it, it's the capacity to recover quickly. Well,
yeah,
if you're a stretched out rubber band and you start to
yeah,
get those cuts in that rubber band, and we all know that, and you start to
yeah,
see where it's tearing or the elasticity of a balloon or something starts to rip, that's why we have to, as women, take care of ourselves. I mean,
yeah.
that's how you build up your capacity, by taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others as well.
And
You
I
know?
think it's so crucial and important. And I think that the last piece that I would say, because we are coming up on our hour, is that I think that we don't have to do it alone. Like
No.
resiliency doesn't mean alone. And so
Right.
when you have a community of people willing to step in, give you advice, at
Hmm.
least just affirm how you're feeling,
Hmm.
um, and provide alternative solutions for you. One, have to be ready to accept it. You have to be ready to make a change.
Hmm.
If you're feeling stuck, you feel like you don't have any other options, this is a fantastic time to make that step into investing in yourself in some way. And so I did want to just spend a moment talking about, we talked about finding a coach or therapy or, and I want to just talk about what group coaching could look like, because I think that now
Hmm.
more than ever, using this opportunity to invest in yourself is such a great chance to be able to also build incredible relationships with women who are on the same track as you, in the sense that like they want to be better. They want to
Yes.
do better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we've had a coaching. I just finished up with one of our coaching circles this fall with 4 women in it, and it was extraordinary. But the thing that made me the happiest, Stevie,
Mhm.
is that after our last meeting, they all decided to continue on their own. And they're
Mhm.
in 3 different states and
Yeah.
different age groups, and
Yes.
but they have some similarities as well. And that to me was like, that was the best part. The peer coaching, the cohort coaching will tell you that lasts longer than anything does.
Yeah.
And that starts to build up that village, that asking
Yeah.
for help and that you're not alone, and build up your emotional resiliency. And so, Wise, you've given, Pam and I the platform to have these coaching circles.
Mhm.
And I think what's neat about it is that we have a general outline of some activities and some things that we like to discuss, but then the conversations are so determined by the participants.
Yes.
Sometimes we've had subjects about influence. How do you build advocacy?
Yeah.
How do you really get ahead? Or conflict management. We've talked about that, how to handle conflict, all sorts of things. And I do think it's a great platform for women to get a part of.
I love it because for me it's I'm impatient with progress, right? And again, another chapter for you. I what I like about it is it's about determining where we are and what's the path
Hmm.
forward. And so
Yes.
guaranteed, it's a guaranteed opportunity for you to move somewhere, right? And
Yes.
I think that for this time of like, if there's anything that you can control, it's that. And if I could gift this to anybody, this is probably the part that I'm just the most excited about within
Hmm.
Wise right now is allowing for people to have access to you. I call you my angel coach. I'm so unapologetic about that because I really do, for me, it's transformed my life. And I didn't really understand what coaching was. I think before I met you, I had met with a few coaches and I knew what a career coach was. I didn't know what a personal leadership coach was. And I think
Hmm.
that it's just so much more than just your career. It's about your whole life and taking a
Hmm.
look at those 8 pillars and understanding, there's going to be some things within that you're going to be really good at, and there's going to be some opportunity areas. And so I'm just so thrilled to have you as a part of Wise. It's been such an incredible journey in us working together in this capacity, but mostly just, when you're on a personal, I love you basis with your coach that like something's going right. So I think that you've become the leader that, you looked up to for so many years.
Aw.
You're doing that for so many women across the country now, Lauris, and
Well,
so honored
thank you.
to have
But
your
Stevie,
support.
it's funny because when I started up my practice 6 years ago, I really was doing executive coaching, C-suite coaching, and then I teach, emotional intelligence and mindfulness.
Yeah,
But I always, in the back of my mind, was sort of like Mama Lauris to some of
yeah,
Shelby's friends and a career person.
yeah,
But then when I met you and we got together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my platform for my organizational business to allow me to really do all this work with these women. And I got to tell you, my best day is when I get to work with bright, energetic, complex lives of
yeah.
the women.
Oh my God.
It's just the best.
It's so rewarding and fulfilling, and I can't explain how powerful it is to have somebody who has the life experience in like a multitude of different ways, but also it showcases like it it's gonna be great.
Well, Stevie, I can tell you, I've learned as much from you
Oh,
and the other women entrepreneurs that hang with you and Wise. I've learned as much from you all that as you have from me because I was much more organizationally focused, and to have all these women start businesses and do all the incredible creative non-conforming type of things that a lot of your members do has really broadened my horizons.
yeah.
So I thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a part of this whole great thing that we're building,
Yeah.
right? And I say we very much of like, it is so much about the community that we built and how strong the membership has become, of when you can be a wellness expert, but you can also very much need guidance in some areas. And so that's the piece that I would just encourage anybody who's watching this evening or is watching the replay of this to say that just because you are a wellness professional or you are somebody who is an expert in one area, that doesn't mean that you can't grow and be stronger in some areas that might really help you achieve your purpose and vision for what the life that you imagine looks like. And I'm so grateful for you and all of our founding members, especially for believing in us, and the entire team. And I really hope that if anybody who is watching, if you have any interest in learning more about coaching or any of our mental health professionals or really any of the Wise Wellness Guild coaches, please reach out to us at hello@wisewellnessguild.com. You can touch base with us through our messaging on Facebook. And you can also learn more at wisewellnessguild.com. We have some very exciting news that's going to be coming up on November 1st. So I don't want to give it away here, but what I would say is I would highly encourage you to tune into the November 4th event that we will be hosting. It is all about the mass exodus of women in the workforce, in partnership with Fifth Third Private Bank. And we have 4 incredible panelists that will be joining us.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
No, it's awesome. We're hosting a very small socially distanced group at Snooty Fox in Marymount, but we will be doing a live stream here on Facebook, on YouTube, and we're gonna, fingers crossed, have LinkedIn at that point. We'll see. But I'm just really grateful for Rosie. Thank you so much. You did amazing. Shout out to Rosie, team member.
Yeah.
She did about setting this up today. Our first one on the books. Thank you so much for us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.